I think these numbers right now beg the question of why does second place even matter? I mean, Trump is so
Right.
far ahead. And if
Right.
2016 taught us anything, it's really, polls aren't concrete, but why does second matter so much when he is beating them in the polls by 30 points, 40 points, in one poll, 50 points?
Yeah, I think it matters only from the standpoint really of momentum, right? I mean, we talked a little bit a few minutes ago, about the math. Let's just say, for example, Trump's at 45 in New Hampshire and Nikki Haley's at 30, which is what some of the polling showed. DeSantis is at like 8 or 10. If he drops out, you're still only, even if all of his votes went to Nikki Haley, it's still not enough to catch Trump. However, if she can clean up enough of that to make New Hampshire a tight race, now all of a sudden say the field kind of clears and she can come within 4 or 5 or 6 points of Trump. Now she's got some momentum. She says, hey, now we're heading into my home state. And that's going to be my firewall. So I think that momentum and appearance of momentum for Haley is really, really important. It's still a stretch. I mean, even with all of those scenarios happening, Trump's really strong in South Carolina too. So, it's not like everybody's been making these assumptions all along about, well, if this person gets out, this is what's going to happen to Trump and this and that. The one thing that has remained constant is Donald Trump's standing in this primary. And it is consistently, I mean, 40s would be low, but it's consistently mid to upper 40s, sometimes into the 50s. And it hasn't really mattered what's gone on in the news cycle, hasn't mattered who's gotten into the race, who's gotten out of the race, who got important endorsements like Governor Reynolds or Bob Vander Plaats in Iowa that DeSantis got. None of that has affected Trump. It's moved around the margins of who's in second or third or fourth. It's kind of rearranged some of the deck chairs on the Titanic, if you will. Hasn't impacted Trump, and that's the challenge. And I think Nikki Haley, with at least having her home state coming up after New Hampshire, would have a rationale to soldier on after New Hampshire if she can have a strong showing there. But for the others, I think it's pretty hard to make the case if you can't get into second place, why you keep going on.
Yeah, based on these numbers, I mean, one thing for certain is he has, and by he, I mean Donald Trump, really has this unshakable support. But New Hampshire is where it gets interesting. According to a St. Anselm poll, Trump is at 44%, Nikki Haley is at 30%, Christie is at 12%, DeSantis a distant 6, and Ramaswamy at 5%. So if your name is not Donald Trump, what are you doing in New Hampshire? What does this mean for you?
Yeah, I mean, the bump that Nikki Haley appears to have gotten from the endorsement of the New Hampshire governor seems to be a lot more impactful than the endorsement of the Iowa governor for Ron DeSantis. So with Haley now all of a sudden in a firm sort of second place in New Hampshire, then you can start to look at, okay, if Chris Christie were to get out, where do his votes go? Well, the data shows that majority, almost 2/3 of Christie votes at least, are going to go to Nikki Haley. DeSantis, she'll probably get about half of them. Ramaswamy's votes would go to Trump, although I don't see him really getting out. I don't think that seems to be his mindset at this point. So I think, really, that's why I say DeSantis has so much to lose in Iowa. If Nikki Haley were to come into second place in Iowa, there would be tremendous pressure for the rest of the field to just get the heck out of New Hampshire, and that being Christie and DeSantis and Ramaswamy to just pack it all in. Because if she's in a strong second place already in New Hampshire, if she were to come in second place in Iowa, I think this ends up a two-person race. Probably by the time folks in New Hampshire pull the lever and vote. Certainly by the time we get to South Carolina.
Is it too early to even say this is a three-person race between Trump at the top and then DeSantis and Haley behind? Should Chris Christie and Vivek Ramaswamy pack it in or wait till Iowa at this point?
In my view, there's no question it's a three-person race. And I don't think any serious person could argue otherwise at this point. Look, Governor Christie's a great guy. He's always had a good message. He resonates well in New Hampshire. But if we're looking at that poll that you just talked about being anywhere close to accurate with Haley at 30 and Chris Christie at 12, it's like, come on, man. Like, if it hasn't happened yet, when's it going to happen? Because you're not going to gain momentum coming out of Iowa. So what's going to spark your momentum? I don't see any sort of intervening event where somebody says all of a sudden, wow, I'm moving off of Nikki Haley and I'm going to Chris Christie. Even if Nikki Haley comes in third in Iowa, that doesn't really help Christie because he's not even going to be on the radar there. So, in my view, it's a three-person race right now. The others, I think, are just sort of, going through the motions at this point and don't really have a realistic shot of making this a competitive two-person race.